I'm delighted to welcome you to today's workshop on mobile wearable video for remote consultations, the pilot that we did with Region Västmanland and Västerås Hospital. We are very happy to deliver the workshop today in conjunction with our pilot partners who are here with us, Region Västmanland and Västerås Stad, and the hospital community nursing and mobile GP team. We will take questions during the workshop, so if you have any, please type them into the Q&A box, which you see at the bottom of your screen, and indicate which speaker the question is intended for. Or if it's a general question, that's fine too. I will put all your questions to the speakers at the end of parts 1 and part 2, and we'll make sure to get the answers to you. So first of all, I will introduce the agenda. Donal, if you could share your screen there, and we will get started.
Hello, this is Donal.
Hi, yes, I can hear you now. Would you like to share the slides? And I will just go through the agenda. So we will discuss various applications for video in healthcare. We will talk about the pilot that was carried out in Region Västmanland, both from a healthcare impact and from an innovation impact, as well as going into the future of video and 5G healthcare applications. So if you could just go down to the next slide, Donal, for the agenda. Donal will present first, but after that, we will have a talk from Sophie Johansson. Sophie is Department Manager for the Public Home Healthcare in Västerås Stad, Sweden. And she will be talking to Annika Karnsund and Matthias Dernberg. Annika is Innovation Coordinator for Region Västmanland with a background in nursing. And Matthias is also an Innovation Coordinator with Region Västmanland, and his background is as a medical engineer, so a formidable team. Annika and Matthias have done great work in driving the pilot and ensuring it was a success, as well as being instrumental in writing the white paper on the pilot. So first we have Donal. Donal is CEO of RedZinc. He's the force behind the mobile video technology, which was piloted in Region Västmanland. He is an engineer who's been working on telecommunications innovations in 5G network applications for many years. He has extensive experience in developing innovative wearable video and teleconsultation software for healthcare professionals and clinics. He has led multidisciplinary teams in future internet technologies from telecommunications, research, and SMEs across Europe. RedZinc has carried out pilots using wearable video in multiple hospitals across Ireland, Belgium, Finland, Norway, Spain, and Sweden. Without further ado, let me hand you over to Donal.
Thanks very much, Jan, and thanks for setting up this webinar. Really delighted to be here, and thanks to Annika and Matthias as well for organizing everything in the Lit and RedZinc's team. So I'm going to talk to you about video in healthcare, particularly mobile video, and how mobile telemedicine can provide support for different clinical applications, and how it all works and how it can provide a benefit. And this is really important as 5G is coming along and new services are becoming available. There's new opportunities for healthcare, digital transformation in healthcare, making life better for patients and making the system and the services more efficient. So to summarize, really, there's challenges in healthcare. There's a rise in the aging population. There's a rise of chronic diseases. There's increased demand for complex services. There's a whole move to have telehealth and devices at home, measuring blood pressure, measuring respiration functions, measuring SpO2 at home, all of these things, and heart function. So there's a whole load of more personalized, citizen-centric healthcare coming along. and patient empowerment is becoming more and more through access of services and information. Really, this is part of the action plan over the last decade with telehealth, and that's all coming to fruition now with the ubiquity of lots of IoT sensors, Internet of Things sensors for the patients at home, and also for telehealth as 5G becomes more ubiquitous. And really, telehealth has become, because of the new telecommunication services, there's a whole potential for distribution of new services. And then diagnosis and monitoring can become more and more between the doctor and the patient. So that's kind of like a business to a B2C. And then there's also a B2B type version between one professional and another in the healthcare system. And the benefits, of course, are to the patient outcome, getting the patient outcome, getting a better patient outcome, whether it's treating a wound more quickly for a frail elderly, whether it's accelerating treatment on a heart attack or a stroke patient, getting them to the cath lab quicker. There's also potential for the hospital at home and avoiding on ambulance transfers and patient transfers that gives cost savings. There's a huge potential for resource optimization. And then telecommunications just gives, the death of distance. I'm in Ireland, but we're having a webinar in Sweden, and just shows the potential for the removement of distance, and that can happen in the emergency and the pre-hospital environment. So there's many, many benefits to come, and the geographical challenges can be eliminated. So lots to come with video and telemedicine and telehealth in healthcare. So let's just talk a little bit about that. So we've been delighted to have been working with Region Västmanland. We actually I was delighted to come to Västerås before the pandemic, and then I got a shock because I couldn't come back and visit because the pandemic happened. And it's only recently I was able to visit Scandinavia. I was in Oslo last week with the ambulance service there. But in Region Västmanland, we're delighted to have started the project and to be able to support it remotely during the pandemic. And that just shows that we can do everything remotely now, and we don't really need to do so much travel. So the use case really was frail elderly patients. So people who are at home, they're in a frail condition, they're retired, and they're needing support. So there's a wide region to be covered, and the community nurse is attending these frail elderly patients. Out of hours is the service that we looked at, so in the evening time and during the weekends. And the use case is really to see if we can make this service more efficient. And one of the things that happens is sometimes the nurse needs to have support from the doctor, perhaps for wound support, for stitches, maybe later could be used for delivery of drugs and therapeutic support. But really, there's a mobile doctor in out of hours, and that doctor is in the vehicle and in the base and driving around. But Västmanland County is very big, and maybe the nurse is in one location and the doctor is 90 minutes away by car in another location. So the whole idea of wearable video to support the nurse, to support the doctor, and to give the best outcome for the patient is what we're looking at. So the idea is that the nurse is able to wear a camera. That camera connects to 5G and it goes through the blue eye cloud, and then the remote doctor is able to see that patient. And that's the whole idea of blue eye end-to-end real-time point of view video solution for mobile telemedicine. And the idea then is that the doctor is remote. The video is coming live from the nurse at the patient. The nurse is wearing one of the cameras, and there's live video going to the doctor over the blue eye cloud. And then there can be diagnosis, treatment, and support. And it works on 4G, but 5G gives a much better picture and gives other infrastructure advantages. And it's a secure and GDPR compliant solution. So that's really what we looked at in Västerås in the pilot, and this is what we'll tell you about today. I'm really delighted to do it. But it's not just for frail elderly. The same platform can be used for any really professional, a nurse or a doctor, a paramedic, moving about, getting support, can be used outside the hospital or inside the hospital. Going back to the emergency department, that's what I was in Oslo last week, is we're working with the urban search and rescue teams in Oslo Ambulance Service and with 5G. So we can go to the emergency department for the paramedics, go to the specialist doctor, maybe a stroke doctor, and then also can be used inside the hospital for education. So really the whole idea is a point of view video goes back from the critical communications environment in the fields back to a remote colleague who can then provide diagnosis, treatment, and support, or if it's a critical incident, provide some oversight and management. And these are lots of different use cases that we have in pilot across Europe. The top right one, that's actually a disaster recovery scenario that we're working with in the ambulance service and the emergency department in a hospital in Istanbul. So this was a disaster earthquake scenario is what we were simulating in this picture. The bottom one here is showing, on the right is showing paramedic buddy support. That was for a single vehicle paramedic. And that's he's doing a pneumothorax there on a mannequin. The scenario there was outside outside of a nightclub. There was an injury following a fight, and the person had a collapsed lung. So you don't see it very well there, but he's putting the needle in there, and the remote participant would go through the checklist as he does that. So that was the scenario in Oslo. This is junior doctor in training. This is one of the scenarios we talked about in Sweden. And then the top one here is a burn victim. We did a pilot with the ambulance service in Groningen in the northern part of the Netherlands. And this then is a pilot we did in Dublin with brain injury, seizure patient, and the health service in Cork in Ireland, who do telehealth, but it's just by voice. So it's plain old telephone, and now we're adding video to that. So there's lots of use cases outside the hospital, and then inside the hospital there are other use cases as well: corona isolation, teaching and education, nursing homes, and virtual ward rounds. So there's lots of different use cases inside the hospital too. So Blue Eye is easy to use. It streams the video live from the camera. It uses the smartphone, which clips in the pocket. 5G smartphone. It's the latest Samsung one, and we always use the latest Samsung one for this application. So you always get the best smartphone. You get a really high quality camera, and then the remote doctor, our nurse, our specialists, they can be anywhere, and they can send the video anywhere and see it from anywhere. So it could be in Sweden, or it could be the northern part of Sweden, or Stockholm, or anywhere in the county. And we're supporting 4G and 5G, and 4G is very getting much more ubiquitous now, and the video quality works quite well. But 5G also does extra things. It makes it go faster, so you get a better picture. But it also gives this idea of prioritization, which is something that can be used with the emergency. So it's like the ambulance can go through the traffic because they have the blue light on. The same thing, we make a bus lane in the internet for the 5G, and then the emergency and medical traffic can go together. So to look on the left, you kind of have, the red one here might be somebody watching YouTube, maybe teenagers watching cats on skateboards on YouTube, and then this blue one here is a telemedicine event. They're all treated the same priority in 4G, but 5G gives you the chance to prioritize them. And the key features, it's a high definition HD camera. You also get the GPS location. You can make snapshots. It's a two-way audio and one-way video, and it's live. And there can be a recording feature available for teaching, but not for a medical environment, just for teaching. And there's lots of different benefits. Remote reality, it's really lightweight in the head. So some people are using the Google Glass idea or the augmented reality headsets, and some doctors were saying just, we don't want to wear those complicated things in our heads. So our design is really designed for lightweight, and that's that's really simple, and it's there's very little electronics on the head, so there's no heat coming off it, and it's real-time support. It's sturdy build, and there's lots of different docking options, so it can go on the head, on helmets, it can go clip on the body, so loads of different options for it. So that's a summary, and I'll pass you over to Lilith now for the next stage. Thank you very much.
Blue Eye Hands-Free is a lightweight device that a user can wear on their head like a pair of glasses. A 2-megapixel camera with a wide-angle lens is comfortably mounted at eye height and gives viewers a distinct perspective while providing a first-person point of view, creating a unique viewing experience. The camera is specially designed to be lightweight, rotatable and work on Wi-Fi as well as mobile networks.
That's great. Thanks very much for doing that, Lilith. And now I'm going to hand you over to Matthias Sternberg, Innovation Coordinator at Region Västmanland, and Sophie Johansson, who is Department Manager of Public Health, Public Home Healthcare in Västerstad. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to inform the English-speaking part of the audience, this interview with Sophie Johansson will be held in Swedish. Afterwards, I will give you a short summation of what Sophie said. So this gives you an opportunity to sit back, relax and enjoy the Swedish language. I'll get back to you in a moment. Tack Sophie för att du är här.
Tack.
Jag tänkte att vi ska ta oss tillbaka i tiden. Ungefär ett år, lite drygt. Berätta lite grann vart du befann dig då organisatoriskt och vad ni stod inför.
Jag jobbade som sjuksköterska här på hemsjukvården för 1 år sedan. Och vi fick information från våra chefer då att vi skulle få vara med och delta i ett projekt som handlade om att det här med digital kamera. Och ja, vi tyckte det var spännande.
Under den här perioden när ni kom till jobbet, vad hände då för någonting?
Vi är olika personer som jobbar helg. Så vi var några stycken från varje helglag som blev bjudna upp till er på regionen och gå en liten utbildning kan man säga hur de här hur kamera och de här instrumenten fungerade så att vi visste hur vi skulle göra. Och sen när det här startade igång så varje lördag och söndag morgon då satte vi igång systemet och sen så hörde vi av oss till mobila familjeläkarna som också kopplade upp sig och så testade vi att systemet fungerade som det skulle inför dagen.
Använder ni utrustningen på alla tillfällen eller var det några speciella tillfällen då ni inte skulle använda utrustningen?
Nej, inte. Vi hade inga särskilda restriktioner. Våra patienter är ju alla över 18 år och de allra flesta är ju äldre personer och äldre patienter. Utan det som var väldigt viktigt var ju bara att vi fick deras samtycke. Så att när vi väl åkte ut på en bedömning av en patient så fick man där och då fråga om man fick samtycke att koppla upp och att en läkare då skulle vara med och göra bedömning.
Berätta gärna om något tillfälle då du eller någon kollega till dig använde utrustningen.
Jag själv gjorde aldrig det, men jag har pratat lite med mina sjuksköterskor här som också var med under projektet. Och det var bland annat en sjuksköterska som åkte ut på ett boende och skulle göra en bedömning av ett sår. Och patienten mådde inte bra, hade blivit en infektion i såret och då kopplade hon upp sig med läkaren och läkaren kunde se såret och se patienten och det tillsammans med vitala parametrar så kunde man sätta in antibiotika, patienten kunde kvarstanna på boendet och ja, så det tänker jag är ett väldigt bra exempel på hur man kan använda den här utrustningen. Läkaren behövde inte själv komma på plats och patienten behövde inte åka in till sjukhus.
Just det. Hur tänker du kring det här med att få använda tekniklösning som telemedicin? Just den möjligheten att kunna få en konsultation med både ljud och bild med någon på distans, och kan det vara till nytta för patienterna?
Ja, alltså jag tänker ju framför allt, precis som i det här exemplet som jag berättar, att patienterna behöver inte ta sig till sjukhus, utan läkaren kan både se patienten framför sig och höra patienten, genom våran utrustning även ställa frågor direkt till patienten och kunna höra och se svaren. Och också göra en bedömning som gör att behandling kan startas på en gång. Men som sagt, verkligen framförallt till nytta för patienten som kan kvarstanna när det går.
Mm. Jag blir lite nyfiken att höra om du ser några andra områden eller situationer där den här formen av konsultation och tekniklösning skulle kunna vara till nytta.
Ja, men jag tänker ju att vi sjuksköterskor också skulle kunna använda den här utrustningen för att ta hjälp av varandra i bedömningar. Men också att omvårdnadspersonal, hemtjänst eller personal som jobbar ute på boendena skulle kunna använda den här utrustningen och koppla upp sig gentemot en sjuksköterska som kan se patienten framför sig och lättare göra en bedömning.
Ja, just det. Om vi nu byter perspektiv igen och går tillbaka till idag. Du är avdelningschef. Och hur tänker du kring att din personal påverkas av att få vara med i sådana här tester och piloter och få testa nya lösningar?
Ja, men jag tänker att vi tycker att det är jätteroligt och personalen tycker att det är jätteroligt. För det första så är det roligt för att hemsjukvården blir synlig och man får en förståelse för våran verksamhet, hur vi jobbar och hur den fungerar. Sen så tänker jag också att det är väldigt viktigt att vi får vara med kring nya lösningar och teknik och digitalisering, utifrån att vi vet att vi har en åldrande befolkning. Allt fler vårdas och kommer framförallt i framtiden att vårdas i hemmen. Och här är ju vi, tycker vi det är jätteroligt att vi får vara med och prova utrustning som gör att det kan göra vården mycket bättre för våra invånare i länet och i vår stad.
Mm. Tack Sofie för att du var med här och delade dina erfarenheter och tankar kring när man var med och testa utrustningar. Thank you, Sophie, for sharing your experience and thoughts with us about the pilot. And as I promised to the English-speaking part of the audience, I will now give a short summation of the interview.
Thank you.
A year ago, Sophie worked as a nurse at the municipality and were informed by her boss that the unit was going to be a part of a test using a new technical solution in cooperation with the mobile family doctors. This particular application can be useful for patients who have long distance to travel to the health centers and hospitals, for employees in an opportunity to grow in their profession. Sophie mentions that this technique can also be used when colleagues contact each other, nurse to nurse, or when staff from a retirement home needs to contact a nurse for consulting. In the dialogue, it is a big help for both parts to be able to see the same thing as you speak. When using the equipment in a patient scenario, it is very important to have approval from the patient, and only patients older than 18 years old were included. Most of them were elderly people. With the increasing of elderly people, we will not be able to take care of all of them in the hospitals. We need to move some of the healthcare into homes. And it's important to find good solutions for the home situation. In the future, not all of the healthcare will be given in the county council. It's necessary for the municipality to be a part of the testing and developing new solutions, new techniques and processes to develop the healthcare. The county council and the municipality needs to do it together. It's a good thing to work together for better healthcare for our citizens. And now, Jean, I believe it's time to let you back in.
Yes, hello again. That was really interesting. Thank you so much, Sophie and Matthias, for that really interesting insight into the healthcare system in Region Västmanland and in Västerstad. And now we would like to invite all of the attendees to ask any questions that they wish to ask of the speakers. If you could go to your Q&A chat box at the bottom of the screen and type in your question, and we will ask it of the presenters. So now we have everybody back. Thank you, guys, and welcome to Annika, and welcome back, Donal. There's one question that has come up just here now from the audience, and it is, what do you think are the benefits of video in remote community nursing?
Who would you like to ask that? So I can give
Well, yeah, well, I
answer,
know
but
that Annika is a nurse, and she has worked in Region Västmanland, so I suppose I'd be interested in hearing her viewpoint on it, but you're very welcome to give yours too.
Okay, Annika, you go first.
Okay, then I can say about the same as Sophie, that for the patient to be able to speak directly to the doctor instead of speaking first to the nurse that speaks to the doctors that then tells the patient what the doctor says, that's really a big difference, because then you don't miss the nuances in what they try to tell each other, for example. And when this works out well, we also know that if someone have to go to hospital, it's because it's needed due to the medical condition, not because we are not able to make a good on place, what do you say, decision.
Yes, it's more difficult to make decisions when you're alone in a situation. I know that the community nurses are well used to doing this, but I'm sure, Sophie, it must make a difference to them to be able to contact a medical expert and discuss the case with them and show them a video.
Yes, absolutely.
So I suppose that the other benefit, it's not just the patient who's benefiting, it's also the nurse in that isolated situation. So they feel that they have a team around them.
Yeah, absolutely. Support from the doctor.
And we discussed that this might make it possible for less experienced nurses to work on this night shift than what is possible today when we don't have this possibility.
And I suppose you can be more comfortable letting nurses who are in trainings or student nurses perhaps in these situations, if they can get hold of somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that when I was starting off in telecommunications research, I don't know, 30 years ago, so that's a long time ago. But one of the things one of the professors, he said, is this was just when there was just plain old telephone. He said it's all going to be about the ascendancy of the eye over the ear, and this was just going to revolutionize telecommunications. And even now, 30 years later, it's only now in the last recent while with the pandemic has just accelerated telemedicine in say in outpatient clinics. So I think people begin to see the benefits of it, even though the deep thinking professors of years and years ago, they foresaw it coming. Only now the networks are getting bigger for mobile, and the workflows and the clinical workflows are changing and getting the benefits of it. So I think that the whole idea of video from one location to the next is going to just change the work processes that people have. And the point that Anika just made about more senior nurses, the medical people are so valuable because they have such a level of experience in different dimensions. Like there's 35 different ologies is what they say to us in the hospitals, 35 different specialities. And then within each speciality, there's sort of different levels of expertise. So we're using communication technology with video. You can get the best use of people's expertise and share that around. And that's really one of the most powerful things. So you can have an expert can be somewhere, and instead of having to spend 30 minutes driving to visit a patient, that expert is spending maybe 10 minutes with 3 patients, giving that higher level of expertise. So yeah, I think it's a really valuable idea, the power of video to improve the work process and to make the expertise that everybody has distributed more efficiently and get better job satisfaction and better patient outcome.
When we started the discussion with RedZinc and Donald about what kind of a test scenario for a pilot that we could find, one of the scenarios that we talked about was an education situation where the junior doctor has a senior doctor that they can call on, but they are actually working on their own. But we said this could be interesting, and so the senior doctor could help and see exactly what the junior doctor was standing in front of and give him support.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing. It's the same model. It's and doctors are so hard to, there's always a shortage of doctors in the world. So if you can share that experience exactly in that use case, it's a real benefit, and everybody will feel more efficient and productive.
Very good, thank you. There's a question here from somebody in the audience to Sophie, asking, what did the patients think about the solution or the technology?
What I've heard, that it was positive.
So they were happy to be involved in the innovation. They were happy to have the video transmitted of them.
Yes, I think that they appreciated that they could talk to the doctor directly.
Yes, of course. You had both the video and the audio going to the doctor. And just a question on that, Annika. How did you overcome GDPR issues with community patients?
We'll tell more about that in the next session. But we for example, we decided for this pilot not to save any videos and not even pictures. But we would like to find a way to do that in the future, because we think that could be valuable for example, to be able to save the recordings for the patient's journal.
Yeah, and I suppose from a product point of view, we really made sure that we were covered in that regard. The video doesn't have a recording facility on it, so that's not an issue. And I guess the consent is gotten from the patient before the video is turned on. So the patient can actually see when the video is being used and being turned on in front of them. It's not like it's a hidden camera. It's actually, there on somebody's head. So from that point of view, they are well informed.
Yes, they are. And what would have happened other ways is that actually persons would have walked into their home, maybe into their bedrooms, and often not only the doctor, but also more personnel. So if we think of integrity, when we use the camera will only be switched on for the time it's needed, and they only will see what's in that room and in the view that the patient and the nurse decides. So in some ways, we actually help the patient with integrity.
Yes. Did you want to come in on that, Donal, in terms of GDPR?
Yeah, I think we'll pick up on it again in the afternoon. But one of the things also about GDPR is making the data stay in the same country. So we've been working with the different Scandinavian telecoms operators to keep the data sovereign, so that the video just moves within one country. Because say we're on the Zoom platform now, this video, it's just a webinar, but that's probably going through a server in the US. So for patient data, you don't want to be doing that. You want everything to be local. So we're working with the mobile edge cloud to make all the GDPR data within the country. And we'll tell more about that in the workshop this afternoon. But yeah, okay. I think that's the best thing to say about it now.
Very good. And I just have a note here from Felicia Jarhult from Digital Care Research, who is very kindly saying that she is happy to share her experiences. So that's very nice. We will definitely be in touch with you, Felicia, afterwards. She's saying that they have had a research network with focus on digital care and different aspects. So some of you guys may be familiar with Felicia. Okay, so thank you for that. And just I will move on to another question that's come in here. And I guess this one is for you, Donal. It's how does Blue Eye differ from other glasses technologies such as HoloLens or smart glasses?
Oh, very good question. So we actually started developing Blue Eye before Google Glass was invented. So Google Glass was invented by the research departments in Google, and mainly the idea was to have a little TV screen in front of your eye. And the TV screen, if it's Google, their business is advertising. So I guess they wanted to put advertising as close to your eye as possible, because I know in advertising they talk about how many eyes can see the advertisement. But that's where Google Glass originally developed, and it's come into the main companies are now not really Google Glass has been dropped as a product. But there are companies who have developed similar technology, and it's called Augmented Reality. So there's some companies that have a similar thing to Google Glass, where it's a little TV screen that goes in front of your eye. It's glass, so you can see through it, but it overlays. There's some of them that are small ones, and then there's some of them that are kind of like visors that go above your head. Now they're all very big, and they're doing more. They have cameras on them, so they can do remote video, but they're not really designed to do remote video. They're designed actually to give extra information, augment your reality in your eye. But the thing about them is that they're different for this type of application because they're big, they're heavy, they have a computer on your head, so that means you have to have batteries on your head, extra weight, extra heat, and they're just doing a different job. So we might be talking about them more in the technology section in the next part of the webinar. But one doctor in Dublin, she said, "I don't want to wear that contraption." So contraption is an Irish word for a big thing on my head. Like I'm wearing these headphones, so it's okay because I'm just listening. But and I would only wear them for like half an hour. If you're wearing these big things, and the HoloLens, which is very good. I've used HoloLens for seeing inside people's hearts. So if you're in a scenario where you're doing diagnostics and you're inside an office environment, it's the visuals are very good. Well, it's a different project, it's a different purpose, and you wouldn't wear them all day, and they're not really suitable for, say, a paramedic being out in the field. So yeah, I hope that answers. And Annika, are you going to say something as well?
Well, I just can confirm that the nurses made clear for us that it's very important that this camera, it should just be there. You don't, to be able to use both your hands to take care of the patients. So we were very happy that we could work together with you to improve the way the camera was attached to the nurse's head, and it worked well together with the visors that was necessary since we had the COVID.
Yeah, we made some changes, and then we'll be going into the changes that were made. There were some adaptations made to the technology thanks to the great feedback that we got from the community nurses who were going out using the product, and we have a better product for healthcare as a result of that feedback and the changes that we made. I suppose with the augmented reality, you're talking about a much more kind of complex process of getting information, which is not necessarily what you want when you're in a situation with a patient. You know, it's very personal with a patient. It's a very customized personal conversation. And it's probably going to be about something that's very, very specific to them. So, you know, augmented reality is not kind of appropriate in those kind of situations. So that's why we focused on the lightweight and the simplicity of the video camera. So thank you for that. Just another question here is, yeah, this one's probably for you, Matthias. What other remote healthcare applications would be good in region Västmanland using video?
Well, there is one scenario that we have been discussing. If an ambulance team arrives to an accident scene, it could be useful for them to, if they report what they are attending to, what they're meeting, to add a picture of what they see could be useful. And so they don't need to describe everything in details. It could be used just to show the video to the colleagues. And of course, if they are have a special patient on the place, on the ground there, that they need to get some consultations around, they could perhaps start some of the healthcare giving right on right away on the scene where they find the patient, and maybe it could get a quicker for the patient to get the right treatment.
Yeah, so in fact that we have been trying it out with paramedics in the ambulance services, and it's really useful for a paramedic, a junior paramedic, or even a junior doctor who's out at some kind of emergency scene. And you can have all sorts of emergencies. It can be anything from somebody having a stroke or heart attack to a car crash, to somebody who's fainted and you don't know what's the problem. So in that situation, it's really useful to be able to show somebody what is going on directly. They can have access to other colleagues. They can discuss what appropriate treatment or what the diagnosis is, which hospital to send them to, which specialist they should be speaking to most quickly. So it really does save time in terms of patient diagnosis and treatment, which is really critical in emergency situations. And again, you have that sense of support for the people who are doing a magnificent job in an isolated situation, but they can feel that they have a team backing them up at all times with this. Did you want to add on to that, Donald?
Well, yeah, just in different countries have different ambulance delivery methods. This is more from the ambulance side, but they have, some countries have doctors that go in second vehicles to emergency cases, but there's not enough doctors, and there's always a shortage of doctors. So it can be used for emergency cases because the paramedic or ambulance technician are closer, so there's more of them, and they get to the patient first. But sometimes they don't have the full set of skills that a doctor would have to maybe deliver the drugs or to decide which is the right location for the patient to go to. Because if it's a cardiac, maybe it goes to a cardiac specialty hospital. If it's a brain cerebral, it goes to brain hospital. So sometimes they have the protocol to take them to the first hospital, but then the first hospital mightn't be the optimal one. It might be, they might go 40 kilometers one way, make a decision, and then go 80 kilometers the other way. So these things are happening in pre-hospital environments. So this is just one extra thing that can happen with emergencies, getting a more rapid response, particularly for acute ones. And then you have with low acuity, you have like low acuity, I think was the frail elderly use case, but there's also some hospitals are saying to us that sometimes there's 10 or 15% of admissions. They don't really need to come to the hospital, but they do anyway, because the risk gets propagated back to the hospital, because the more senior people are there and the person gets transferred. So that brings time and costs, increases risk for the patient, because the hospital is a riskier environment because there's so many different things going on there. So if for the low acuity cases, if you can do more treat at home, in Ireland they have a strategy for stay left, shift left. So stay left is keeping the patient at home. Shift left is bringing the patient from the hospital home quicker and using digital techniques and transformation like telehealth and video, and also like more monitoring features to enable that. So yeah, so it's a whole potential for improving the patient outcome, with adding extra skills in the right place. I think one doctor in Belgium, he said to us, the right person in the right place at the right time, giving the right diagnosis. So that can be all helped with mobile telemedicine. So yeah.
And in Ireland, in particular, we have a scarcity of medical resources, where we just don't have enough doctors. It's hard to get to see doctors. I don't know, do you have that situation in Sweden with nurses and doctors? Put that maybe to Annika.
Yeah, I have to unmute too. Yes, we that is a situation that is going to come if it's not already here, since, as you showed in your presentation, we have this demographic situation where we'll have more elder people and less people in working ages. So in some areas we're already there, and we can see it coming in other areas.
Yeah, and this is another one of the challenges, I suppose, that's facing us globally, really, as we advance. Very good. So another question that's come in is, can Blue Eye be used for educational purposes, such as training using video? And I guess, Donald, could you answer that, or maybe Matthias? So
well, because of his beauty, then I'll start. I think it's absolutely an opportunity to use it as education situations. You don't always have to use it in the actual real field situation. Yet you can learn a lot from how to use the technique when you have a simulation environment, and I think you can also do education in real life situations as well. Then, Donald, I let you in there.
Yeah, well, I was just going to remind you about the use case that Dr. Jan had at the very start, which is training the junior doctors to make them more available, because it's a really hard work to go into a out of hours service, because maybe 9 out of 10 events are, let's say, normal, and then one event is really, really complicated, and a junior doctor just finishing college, starting out in his first or second year, his or her first or second year, maybe has never seen that complicated case. So there's kind of on-the-job training, and it's constant development. And then we have some activities in Finland where they're using it inside the hospital for teaching undergraduate doctors. And then they said the same thing to us that Matthias and Dr. Jan were saying in Västerås. They're saying as you graduate, then to become a consultant. I'm not sure the word in Ireland is a consultant. After about 8 or 9 years, you get to a certain level. In Sweden, you probably have some grade as well, but that's based on having experience, but you have to be tested and evaluated for that. So they had ideas to wear the camera as you're doing your normal job, and then you get evaluated by that. So that's another use case. So yeah, and then we have it being used for nurses, nurse teaching in Spain, and inside hospital teaching in Finland. So yeah, lots of different use cases. I need to take a drink of water, so I'm going to stop speaking for a second.
Okay, well, let me just go on to a different question, which I guess Sophie might be able to answer this one, or any of you really. But what other uses could video telemedicine have in region Västmanland? So I think you mentioned before about nurses saying that it would be useful peer-to-peer,
Yes.
colleague to colleague.
Jag tar det på svenska.
Ja, nej men vi pratade ju också om att undersköterskor eller omvårdnadspersonal skulle kunna kontakta en sjuksköterska för konsultation. För också sköterskan skulle kunna göra, alltså det skulle underlätta och göra en bedömning.
Do you know the word undersköterska, Jane?
No, can't say I do.
No.
Do explain.
I don't know the English word for it, but I think it's the personnel that care for the patients when there not is a nurse around. If they could wear a camera. Assistant nurses, yeah. Then they could carry the camera and send the picture to the nurse, because in Sweden very much of the care in homes are carried out by these assistant nurses, and there could be 1 or 2 nurses that cover a whole house full with people with needs.
And is it something that would be useful in a nursing home for, I suppose, regular checkups? If you had a hot desk set up in the hospital where a doctor was available, or a nurse, senior nurse was available.
It could be, and it's a good example also in the challenge we have, because if we wanted to start with that, we would have to change the processes, the ways we contact each other, and set up new functions. And I think we will need to do that. But that's also why, though we like this very much, as you hear when we talk about it, we're not ready to implement it all over the organization. We have to find our way to use it in a smart way.
Yes. One of the things that has come up recently in Ireland with local hospitals is the fact that when you're using telemedicine, the work processes do have to change, and the administrative work around the use of video has to change. So, you know, normally with a clinic situation, you'll have somebody who books the patients in, who tells the patients, you know, where to go, and follows up with them, and does all of that work. So it allows the nurse or doctor to get on with their speciality. And they're realizing that now, and they're starting to put in telemedicine hubs for different health services in the hospitals. So they'll have a hub, say, for chronic disease management or frail and elderly, where they'll have a medical doctor or nurse who's expert in that particular service. They'll have them available for a certain amount of time, and then they can be contacted by video, see what's going on, have their colleague explain the kind of the situation on the ground there, and deliver the expertise while they can see what's going on. Is that something that you can see happening or changing in Sweden, in Region Västmanland?
Yes, we are looking at it, how we can use these kinds of technique. And like Donald said here, that this camera is very light and, or say, not low technology, but what we have, what's necessary there, not more, not less.
Minimum.
And in the same way, we have to think of what use we have for video in every different meetings, so we don't, what do you say, overuse it?
Yes, I suppose it can be used for some applications. It can be very useful, and then for other applications, it's not really necessary.
It's only complicating things if we use it in the wrong way.
Minimal, I think, was that the word you used, Jan? Maybe what is the Swedish word for minimal? So it's complicated, but it's simple and small and
yeah.
Yes, and not the patients and nor the personnel need to know all the complicated things. We have to make it easy to use.
And that's one of the things as well, because like we showed the camera, but behind the camera there's a whole cloud stack. So we have engineers who are building that. So we hide all those complications from you, and that's, the engineers don't come to the front as they're building it, but they are there in the background making the whole system work and improving it and adding new features, because we're always being asked for new features all of the time. So so we keep a big engineering team for that. So yeah.
And do you think there are other ways in which the work methodologies or work processes need to change in order to incorporate video?
Yes, but I don't have the full answer to that. But what we have seen in this pilot is that it could be really useful, but that we have to prepare more and maybe change our mindset a bit when we have this possibility.
Yes, and I suppose that the way to figure that out is to try it with different types of healthcare services.
And I think as well that healthcare process is, it moves slow because they do new things slowly, because you have to be risk averse. So you're looking after somebody's life, and by nature of interventions and pharmaceuticals, all of these things have a high as you're doing something new, you always have to take lots of steps and get ethical approval and guidelines. So there's always kind of a change is slow in the healthcare sector because of this risk averse nature. But I think that once you do a pilot and you see the benefits, then the new clinical work processes can come along. And I find one of the things I find very interesting is that, like, I'm an engineer, so I don't really know about all the medical things that doctors and nurses do, all the magic that they have. But I do know that some doctors and some nurses like very much to be looking at the new technology and trying out the new things, and that's what we've experienced in Vasterus. So we're really delighted to have our friends in Vasterus, even though they're not engineers, to come along with all these magic engineering ideas that we've then implemented with our industrial designers. So we'll talk about those later today, but it's really been a fantastic collaboration, and I'm delighted to have participated. And is there any more questions there that you have, Jan, that I can pick up?
No, I think that is it. I've come to the end of the questions. So unless anybody has anything else, I guess we will close this part 1. Thank you so much to Sophie for coming along and telling us all about the pilot and how it worked. And thank you for, all the innovation. We need so much change in healthcare to make it better, and really technology has so much to offer healthcare to bring that along, but as Donald says, in a considered way, and we need to work together to do that. So
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time, and we will see you back in part 2. We will be restarting again at the top of the hour. I'm just trying to get my times right here. So that's 3 p.m. in Sweden. It's 25 to 3 now. So if you like to go and have a break, and we will see you back for part 2. So thank you very much, everybody.
It's the same link, isn't it? So we just keep this
The
link.
same link, keep it open.
Okay.
Don't close it, and we will be back in 20 minutes.
Okay, see you then. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.
See you shortly. Bye-bye. Thank you, Sophie. Okay, so maybe we will kick off again. You are all very, very welcome back to part 2 of our mobile wearable video pilot workshop, which we carried out in Region Västmanland with the help of our colleagues who are here today hosting the workshop with us. My name is Jan Caffrey, and I'm from RedZinc's product team based in Dublin. Just wanted to note again that we are recording and we are taking questions. If you want to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, I will ask the questions at the end of part 1. So first, let me introduce the agenda again and the speakers. I wonder if, Donald, you can share your slides and put up that first slide with the agenda for the second part on it. So in this part of the workshop, we will have a short presentation from Donald. He will talk about the details of the pilot and some of the adaptations that we made on the Blue Eye video technology. And this was as a direct result of feedback that we got from the community nurses in Västmanland. And there we go. So if you just go down to the second part of the slides, yeah, that's it. There we go, slide 17. So there, with Donald talking about pilot details, the adaptations of the video technology, and he'll talk about the white paper that we wrote. And then we'll hear from Annika and Matthias. Annika Kurensund, Innovation Coordinator for Region Västmanland, and Matthias Sternberg, Innovation Coordinator also for Region Västmanland, who will talk about the innovations in video in healthcare, the outcomes of the pilot, the benefits that they brought, the future benefits, and the future innovation. After that, we're going to have a panel discussion on the 5G networks and the new value-added services that they add for the healthcare sector and many other sectors. Then we'll finish up with a Q&A. So if you have any of those questions, write them down. So as I mentioned in part one, Donal is CEO of RedZinc, a video technology company based in Dublin. Please go ahead, Donal, with the second part.
Okay, thank you very much. Just checking that my microphone is working. Do you hear me fine?
Yes, just remember to speak slowly for our Swedish colleagues. I know that this is a mixture of Swedish and English workshop, but just to be mindful of people whose English is not their first language.
Yes, thank you for that reminder, and I really appreciate that because the last time I was in Sweden, everybody was so generous to speak in English to me, so I really appreciate that, and thank you very much. So I'm speaking in English, and I'll go through the presentation and answer any questions that come up in the panel discussion and come in on the chat afterwards. So let me move into the presentation now. So what we had this slide before, but just in case for new people come along, the pilot that we did with Region Västmanland was really about connecting frail elderly patients who are being attended by community nurses in out of hours. So the community nurses are out of hours in the evening time and at the weekend, and they are attending these frail elderly patients who need some help with something. And then sometimes the community nurse would also like to get help from a doctor. And that doctor, he or she could be in the other part of the county, in the car, they could be in the clinic, it's nighttime or at the weekend or on the holidays. So not everybody is available, but sometimes emergencies don't wait for people to be available. So the idea was to allow the nurse to be able to connect to the doctor and the doctor to see what the nurse is doing with the patient using the mobile wearable video. So that's the use case. And the existing setting that we have today is that the nurse makes phone calls to the doctor for support. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes support is needed. And the plain old telephone is used. And the advantages of the plain old telephone is that everybody has one. It's been in use. The telephone was invented, I don't know, 120, 130 years ago, and it's ubiquitous. So everybody knows how to use it. And there's smartphones now, and many people have smartphones, and billions of them in the world. All the children have them. Everybody has smartphones now. But they don't provide full contextual information when you have a plain old telephone call. And in many cases, the doctor has to travel a distance to see the patient, to see the nurse, to help. And that help might only be specialist help for 5 minutes. That might be all that's needed, but it might take a 30 or 40 or 50-minute drive in a car, 100 kilometers from one end of the county, Västmanland County, to the other. So these things happen, and that can be inefficient for a healthcare system. So that can lead to long travel distance and then delayed patient treatment. So in this use case, delayed patient treatment is they're low acuity. It's frail elderly, but it's doing things like wounds on patients. So it's not high acuity like a stroke, but this application could also be used for high acuity use cases. And the scenario is really that the nurse, the mobile community nurse in Västerås, is visiting the frail elderly patient. So that's really step one. And sometimes the nurse needs to receive the advice of the doctor. So a call is made to the doctor, and the doctor could be in the clinic or at home or in the car at another patient or traveling. And then the idea is that the nurse is wearing the point of view video, and she, the nurse, or he is able to send the picture of the patient back to the remote doctor, and the doctor can be then engaged in the treatment. And it might only be for 5 or 10 minutes to give some advice on a wound or on stitches, or maybe approve to deliver to this patient administer some drug, make some intervention. So this is the use case that we supported with 5G. And what you can see here now is a picture of the nurse on the left-hand side. So this is one of the nurses wearing the camera, and she's treating the patient. And then the remote doctor is able to see what's happening. And it's real-time point of view video and audio going to the remote doctor. And the remote doctor is giving back diagnosis, giving back treatment suggestions, and giving back support. And that's happening over 4G or 5G, and can also work in Wi-Fi, but 5G is the best because no passwords are needed for the house Wi-Fi. So with Blue Eye, the mobile video is able to give mobile video telemedicine to the mobile GP, general practitioner, physician, doctor, who's able to collaborate and guide the remote nurse who's faced with sometimes a challenging situation. And it's not always a challenging situation, but sometimes there are times when the nurse does need extra help. But I spoke to one nurse in Ireland, and she said more help is always necessary, or is always beneficial. Not always necessary, but always beneficial. And doctors are really collaborative people, but sometimes they're just in the wrong place. And with new technologies, we can overcome that. So the benefits, and we're looking at the benefits for the 5G health project point of view. So video is providing the full contextual information to the remote GP, to the remote physician, to enable efficient decision making. The nurse can provide treatment to the patients with the support of the GP, and often can eliminate the need for the GP to travel to the patient. And that means then the GP can prioritize better the GP's visits to the patients who need more immediate attention. The GP's time can be freed up, saving on travel time, but freed up to deliver more care to higher important patients who need it more quickly. So in many cases also can present patient transportation. So sometimes the patient has to go to the hospital, but they don't always need to go to the hospital. There's roughly 10% of admissions by ambulance to hospital are not needed. And that's because the risk gets propagated back to the emergency department of the hospital. And using these technologies of mobile telemedicine, you can save on the patient transport in some cases, not all, but in low acuity cases. And it makes the healthcare system more efficient. And here's a quote from Dr. Jan Grasberg. So he was the GP in the mobile video team, mobile GP team that we worked with. And we're delighted to work with Dr. Jan and also with Matthias and Ika and all the nurses. So to read out his quote, really, video transfer could be very useful technology in small teams working in remote communities. It's easy to set up and use. Newer staff can be connected with more experienced colleagues, and municipal nurses can contact the mobile GP team using video. Video gives more detailed information and can enhance decision-making about patient health. So we started off with different scenarios, and we were really delighted to get a practical work happening, and we learned lots during the pilot. We had designed lots of different cameras, and we sent to Sweden our neck mounting camera. And during the feedback, Dr. Jan and Annika and Matthias said to us, well, we'd like it done a little bit differently. What about using a headband like they use on torches? So we reconfigured our design. We worked with our industrial designer, and we made a much smaller headband, much more comfortable to use, much easier camera to work with, and we were delighted to do that. And we've made a much better product as a result of doing the pilot with Vasteris. So we were delighted for that. And we also developed a torch camera as well. So these are some of the things that we did from the ergonomics and the camera point of view. But it's not just a camera, it's also a software platform. Behind the camera, there's a whole set of cloud software. And we introduced an additional two-factor authentication to give different levels of security. So there's lots of different levels of security that can be applied. And in the ultimate, this was one of them that we added to it. And then we also added in options for wide angle and narrow angle camera options. So sometimes you want to be able to see the wide perspective, and sometimes you want to have close up. So we have two different camera options for wide angle and narrow angle situations. So just a summary, the participants felt that video in community nursing is the future and it's a potential to improve the accessibility to the doctor's expertise. So if I move on then to the next slide. So we did two white papers, one in Swedish, well, it's the same paper, but one translated to Swedish and English. And we were able to set that up for the project, and we collaboratively wrote it between the team in Dublin and the team in Vasteris, and it was a really interesting experience to write that paper. So that's the presentation. So thanks very much, and back to you, Jan.
Great. Thank you so much, Donald, for taking us through that. And I am going to hand over now to Annika and Matthias, who are going to discuss from their perspective, which is one of innovation, the pilot and the technology and the future for such technology. So over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Matthias and I are innovation coordinators in Region Västmanland, and we want to switch perspective a bit and see the project from our angle as innovation coordinators in public healthcare in Region Västmanland. So first we want to show you the background of the pilot. And we in Västmanland have a clinical research center that participated in a EU-initiated project, Eureka Celtic Health 5G, Future e-health powered by 5G. And our role was that the user cases that have use of 5G technique to show that. And in this project, it was identified and the technology was developed and tested in cooperation between companies, researchers, and healthcare. So here in Sweden, Mälardalen University coordinated the Swedish consortium. And well, our role as innovation coordinators were to give input from end users to the development of solutions for healthcare. And we were contacted by RedZinc that offered us to participate in a pilot to test Blue Eye video solution. In the first months of 2020, we arranged a workshop to identify relevant scopes for a pilot in clinical setting here in Västmanland. And Donald from RedZinc company here on the picture, he came to Västmanlands sjukhus Västerås, and we demonstrated the video solution, let the attendees test a fictive scenario, and then they suggested their own user cases. So we had to choose only one of several user cases where remote consultation with Blue Eye video could be interesting. For example, the video solution seemed useful for stroke and emergency care, like we have talked about earlier today. Well, among all these possibilities, we decided to start a clinical pilot with a general practitioner in Norberg in northern Västmanland. The setting was to let junior doctors consult a senior general practitioner to be able to help more students from a remote location. But right then, when we worked on a project plan and the ethical application for a study, we had a pandemic. And that changed the scene, and Region Västmanland Innovation had to pause all contacts within healthcare. So in the spring of 2021, we were able to restart our participation in the project. The general practitioner was now a medically responsible physician for Region Västmanland's mobile general practitioners team. The GP team covers all of Västmanlands with consultations out of hours. And it's a wide area. As we heard from Sophie and Matthias earlier today, we agreed to run the pilot in home care setting together with the municipality of Västerås stad. The nurses in home care makes a phone call to the general practitioners team when they are in a patient's home and need to consult the physician. If the problem is not possible to solve with a call, the mobile general practitioners team have to drive there to be able to see the patient and decide if the patient can be treated at home or have to go to the hospital. Due to the pandemic, the timeline for this clinical pilot we planned was very tight. I'd say that in ordinary setting, we wouldn't even try. We had to narrow the pilot and only work with Västerås stad, even if we had wanted to include more healthcare providers in our area. Attendo Care, for example, participated when we tested the Blue Eye video and made scenario tests, but we had not time to set up a clinical pilot with them. I just want to say that this picture is arranged and the persons on the picture know what the picture is going to be used for. Well, this is a brief picture of how I thought we would set up the pilot. Even if we know that there are many details to get in place before we can run a test in real life, I must say I underestimated the complexity of this project. So this is more close to reality. Usually, like I said before, we wouldn't have tried to get it done with this schedule, but the EU project was running out of time and we were depending on that to pay our expenses. And also we had promised the consortium to run tests. So we first had a suggestion that we should run the pilot for 2 weeks. Well, we decided to stretch that to 6 weeks because we wanted to make sure that all nurses that work out of hours would have the opportunity to participate. Afterwards, we think that 6 months would have been even better, since an aim was to evaluate usefulness and limitations of the use of video streaming in clinical setting. And in this 6 weeks, we got very good feedback on the technology itself, but it was not enough time to evaluate the changes in the workflow. So this is another way to explain our challenge. There are many activities that have to be in place to be able to run a clinical pilot, and this can be quite messy. Region Västmanland Innovation has checklists that help us to identify which legal documents that are required to set up a pilot in healthcare. And we also had good input from RedZinc company, where they handed us a cookbook based on their experience from other pilots, which was really helpful when we sorted out necessary activities to write the project plan and run the pilot. So this helped us to line up the necessary activities better. We also decided to write an application to the Swedish ethical review authority to get an advisory judgment. Well, one condition to be able to run the pilot was to get permission from all different decision makers when we work together like this. They are responsible for their personnel and for the patients, and they needed enough information to be able to weigh up if the benefits of participating in the project weighs more than the risks. The managers gave their consent and granted resources to be able to run the project. This was not possible to make in one single step, since we knew more details the further the planning was set. We had to come back to them more than once. Among many necessary activities, I want to highlight the work with the data processing agreement. I would say this is a keyhole that we have to find ways to handle to be able to run pilots at all. Even if we used an already prepared and approved document, we had to assemble our very busy managers and data experts, both from Region Västmanland and from the municipality of Västerås stad, for 2 long sessions to classify the data we were going to process in the pilot, and to assess the consequences according to the general data protection regulation. These quite time-consuming activities were necessary to be able to set up data sharing agreement between Region Västmanland and the municipality of Västerås stad, as well as a data processing agreement between Region Västmanland and RedZinc company. To get this data processing agreement in place would not have been possible without a smooth dialogue between Region Västmanland and RedZinc company. It was clear to us that RedZinc already were well aware that we have to secure the integrity of the patients. RedZinc, for example, decided to set up servers and keep the video streaming inside Sweden, and to use sub-processors that could keep the cloud infrastructure inside EU. We also agreed not to save any pictures related to patients. So, and these activities with classification also revealed new requirements, both on the testing parts and the company. Instructions to the end users, for example, how to use the 2-factor authentication that RedZinc company developed for the pilot. And it was decided not to use video streaming if caring for children, and of course not if compulsory care would be necessary. We also clarified a backup routine to make sure the pilot would not delay care if anything screwed up. We also trained the nurses in a fictive scenario before they used the video in real life. The users were instructed to inform the patients before they activated the streaming, and of course not stream video if the patient said no. Well, all this was set up during the summer, when we usually do not disturb our healthcare providers, because we know they have a hard time to manage staffing during the period of vacations. So I'm quite proud and grateful to have such committed partners to cooperate with. So now, Matthias, what do you want us to tell us about the pilot in Västerås?
Yes, I think we should take a look into what did we learn from the test and what do we bring with us from it, the experience from the pilot. It is a lot of work to go through with a pilot like this. It's truly a group effort. You need a decision to be taken high up in the organizations, both the municipality and the county council. And you need a guiding hand to find those persons that you're gonna need for the pilot. a pilot, it takes time and requires a lot of resources. Therefore, it's crucial that the subject of the pilot is aligned with the interest in our organizations. And all of the steps that Annika earlier mentioned, according to the agreements, how to handle risks, data security, consequences, analysis, assessments, and so on. This is really good experience to have, to been through them. And it will be useful in future tests. And hopefully this will result in us getting quicker with the preparations of a pilot. And have you heard the saying, it's better to have a plan and to change it than to have no plan at all? You try to anticipate everything, but really you can't always do that. And we have a few examples of things that came up which we had to deal with. So we can take the next picture. It was at nighttime and the nurse entered the patient's home using the phone. She realized that the screen of the telephone required a lot of light for her to see the screen. It was too dark to see. So RedZinc fixed that. A function for adjustment of light was added. And the pandemic, we mentioned it happened as well a little bit earlier here in the seminar. It also resulted in more protection equipment was used by the staff, visir and plastic aprons. And the initial plan for the placement of the phone, it turned out to be covered by a plastic apron, which resulted in that the phone couldn't really pick up the conversation very well. So the position of the phone had to be moved. And also the placing of the camera needed to be adjusted due to the use of the visir. Some of these things were rather small changes, but the users needed the information about these adjustments, which we didn't have been thinking through actually. We didn't have a description of how to spread information if an upgrade of the hardware or the software was needed. So we couldn't verify if everybody got the information in time. And what about the benefits according to provide pilots like this one? Well, for us healthcare providers, it's a checkup of the development around us. And it's an opportunity to get acquainted to new technology and to consider how it could be used in our daily work. And for the company, it is an opportunity to receive feedback on their products. Both tests in simulated and real environments enables good input from the users to improve the product and the offers that follows it. For the society, it is good to have companies with customized products. Pilots leads to that. And in the long run, pilots will improve both healthcare for the patient and the working environment for the staff. And speaking of supporting companies, we have today mentioned it earlier, and we are very proud of letting you know again. Anna, can you please switch picture?
Ta-da!
Yeah, there was some problems to get the headband of the camera to fit. It was not comfortable. So Jan, a significant doctor for this pilot, he asked if a solution like his headlight could be useful. So again, RedZinc fixed it. It was not used in this pilot, but it was tested in the Netherlands, and what I know, they liked it. And we also like stories like this. When our employers, they help to improve products. And RedZinc, please call it Jan Headband. And if you look ahead, what do we bring with us from this test, from this pilot period? The experience of all the preparations, all the work with the time schedule, all of it, it's a good experience for the future pilots. And we found an area that we are interested in to investigate. That is how we could develop process for how to go from a pilot like this one to implementation of a product. How could that process look like? What do we need to think about? And is there anything that we need to solve first before it can start? So you see, there's a lot of questions, and it is inspiring. And we hope that you do feel it too, inspired to find areas identified by the healthcare that needs to be developed, and to realize that tests in this area really can bring out value to caregivers, to caretakers, entrepreneurs.
Yes. That is actually one of the purpose for this seminar, to pull out and increase creativity with a will to part of development.
Yes.
You were gone there for a while, Matthias.
Oh, are you kidding me? Like, good to know. Where was I last time you heard me?
Well, you told us about that tests in this area brings value to caregivers and takers, entrepreneurs, employees, and citizens.
That is so well said.
Yes, I think you were going to say that it's one of the purpose for this seminar to pull out and increase creativity and a will to be part of development.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was truly what I was going to say. And then I was about to add that in Region Västmanland Innovation, we used to say like this, that everything starts with an idea, a thought of your mind, take care of it. And now, John, I believe it's time to let you back in, maybe together with Terry, Ricardo, and Donald.
Yes, thank you so much. That was a really interesting presentation. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for speaking in English for us here in Ireland with no Swedish. Thank you for running the pilot in such a short time. You know, under the pressure you were in during the summer holidays, and having to get the buy-in of all those decision makers, it didn't sound like it was an easy task for you. So thank you so much for doing all that. And very interesting points on the adaptations that were made on the headband and the camera as a result of the pilot. We're very proud to bring these changes to help healthcare and society to move forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So now, as the, I suppose, second part of the second part, we are going to move into a panel discussion. So we have Donald back, and we also have Ricardo and Terry joining us. You're very welcome, guys. Terry has many years in telecoms and electronics, and he's managed product design and network infrastructure projects in multinational companies across medical electronics. He's helped design the camera, and as you can see, he is actually wearing the camera here today. Move there to the side there, Terry. We can get a picture of it. Very nice, with the headband and the torch. Is it, or is it just the camera?
No, I don't have the torch on, Jan.
Just the camera. Very good. It looks very good. And I'll just introduce Ricardo as well before I let you guys get on with your discussion. So, hi, Ricardo. You have led the design and implementation of Blue Eye video platform software. So he's behind the scenes on everything there, responsible for the design of the prioritization part of the Blue Eye technology, and research and development into software-defined networks and network slicing as part of many EU projects that we've worked on. So I will hand over to you guys and to Donald. We're going to talk about 5G networks and the new types of healthcare services that can be used because of these new networks with lower latency and higher speeds. And it should be an interesting discussion. So off you go.
Thanks very much, Jan, and thanks Matthias and Anika for the nice presentation before. And hello, Ricardo and Terry. So Ricardo and Terry are both engineers like myself, and delighted to have a little chat about this. One of the interesting things I found was the security. So when we were doing the GDPR with Anika, one of the things that came up, of course, was the security. So we have the video is encrypted, but then there's more security layers that can be added on. And Ricardo, I know that you're doing lots of work with that, adding 4 different layers of security. We talked about the encryption, and then they were also adding the 2-factor authentication, which is becoming quite standard. But the more interesting thing is the mobile edge computing platform, and that gives extra security from, I suppose, the point of view of via virtual private networks and private access network points, and then the servers are inside the telecoms network. So Ricardo, you're doing lots of work on that, on some Scandinavian telecoms infrastructure at the moment. Do you want to just tell us how you're going about that and what benefits that brings from a security point of view to the hospital?
Well, as mentioned before, our software is cloud-based. And like in real life, clouds are very far away and currently only accessible via the internet. So the mobile edge computing allows us to take a piece of that cloud and place it very close to the people actually using the service. This has many benefits. As you've mentioned, security, because it's no longer part of the internet, it's part of your local telecoms operator. So it never ensures that, for example, video traffic never leaves your country. So you have full ownership over all the data paths for that specific video. And also, because it's now closer to you, it also improves on performance. So the typical latency that we have with video calls like this one is reduced even further. And as well, if it's closer, also means that we can probably put more bandwidth there, which improves picture quality to ensure that you get a better view of the scene. So this allows us to, in partnership with operators, create a custom-built deployment for your use case.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ricardo. And one of the interesting things as well, you say it can also be in the country, but even within the country, the mobile edge cloud, some of the operator infrastructure that we see, it's actually going right to the edge. And when you look out in the street, you can see the towers. So those towers have aggregation points. So they're going to the aggregation points as well. So it's getting very close. The cloud, instead of it being a big factory in a warehouse somewhere in the center, it's coming really distributed and localized. So that's a fantastic service, and that's coming from all of the the 5G telcos in Europe, and they're all building that. And just then to ask Terry about ergonomics. So Terry, you've a deep, long career in telecoms design, and you're familiar with mobile telephones and plain old telephones, but this is a really interesting new technology that you've been working on with us over the last 4 or 5 years for wearable cameras. Can you tell us a little bit about the factors influencing the ergonomic design and what we did and how it came about, and the work that you did with the industrial design team in RedZinc? Terry, over to you, please.
Yes, Donald, it's been a long journey from an initial camera that was connected to a backpack in our first early trials around 2014, I think. And then we gradually miniaturized and reduced what we had, both on the electronic side and on the physical side of the camera. And at that point, then we brought in the connection to a smartphone, because the smartphones had got to a stage where they were now 4G and where they had a lot of processing power. So that meant we didn't have to build our own electronics for that. and we could piggyback on the wireless side of the smartphone, and we could embed our own software into it and manage the encryption right from the camera on the side of the head all the way to the screen that the remote doctor looks at. So we went through a number of phases, and we had to consider the inputs we got from many countries and users and potential users and different environments. And the camera that I'm wearing at present, which has been very much influenced by the inputs from Västmanland and the people there, that particular style is very suitable to what I would call an indoor environment in a nursing home or a hospital ward, or just a general use by a doctor. But we also have to consider the other situations of a paramedic attending a road accident at night where a car has gone off the road and down a bank. So what does he need? He's already wearing safety gear. He's already wearing a helmet. He's carrying a lot of other equipment. So we have to try to factor in how our wearable fits in with all of the kit that he has to carry and the environment that he's working in. So we see quite a range of applications, and we have developed different types of wearables and different ways to mount the camera to accommodate all of these different environments. So that was a great challenge, and continues to be a very interesting challenge. And we constantly receive inputs from our customers and from pilots, such as we're talking about today, on what the user, the wearer, actually wants. And it did come up during the previous presentation there that during the pandemic, suddenly everybody was wearing lots of protective equipment. So that meant that our camera had to be outside of face coverings and masks, and it still had to work. So we had to meet that challenge, which was a new environment for us. So they were some of the issues that we've dealt with and we continue to deal with, and we can make very quick changes using the advanced 3D printing techniques that are available now to make specific designs for specific applications.
Oh, thanks very much, Terry. And we're delighted to call the camera Dr. Jan Camera, because we call that informally in the lab and stuff, and as we're developing it. But we just want to say thanks to Dr. Jan and Matthias and to Annika for really helping us get to this position, because we're finding that lots of people are interested in this type of camera now that we've made so easy to use. So that all came from the work with yourselves last summer. So we really appreciate that. And then to move on from the ergonomics a little bit, it's obviously lightweight and easy to use and gives lots of benefits over the augmented reality devices. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that, Terry, as well? How that kind of miniaturization, minimalization goes and how that plays out?
As you can see, I'm at a stage in my life where I need to wear glasses. And with the arrangement that I have now, my glasses don't interfere with the camera, and I'm quite comfortable wearing them. So in applications where people have to wear safety glasses or safety goggles in their environment, which is quite common in medical scenarios, our camera has to be not getting in the way of other wearables. And what we find with some of the other systems that are out there is that they're not suitable to go into all of the medical environments, that they're fine to wear on their own for a specific application, what I'd call in the general world. But the considerations that are necessary in healthcare, such as being able to clean the device, that's not always considered. To be able to wipe down a device, particularly during COVID, this was an issue that we had to consider. How does the wearer clean or look after the camera? But some of the bigger glasses mounted arrangements would not be compatible with the other protective equipment that needs to be worn. So that is why we need to keep developing our own lightweight, simple to operate camera approaches. The other factor to consider is that paramedics and nurses and doctors have a whole range of equipment to deal with. So, adding the camera and the electronics, it has to be very simple to operate. We all know how, well, us slightly older people know how difficult it is to adapt to new technology. And we can see how our children and grandchildren can quickly control all of these things. But we have to take those issues into account as well. So we need a device that works reliably, is very simple to switch on and off, and doesn't interfere with any other equipment that's in use in the field.
Very good, Terry. Thanks so much for that insight. And then I'll go back to Ricardo and just on the 5G side. So this the camera Terry's wearing and the access device, that's all designed now for 5G, and the camera capability is much ahead of the network capability, because the image we can send is very, very high quality. But Ricardo, you've been working now in 5G technology, I think, since 2015, when the first 5G research and development projects came along. Do you want to talk a little bit about the evolution of 5G as you've seen it from a research and development point of view, and how it's enabling catching up really with the camera technology and capabilities of image sensors? Ricardo, please.
Yeah, so a lot of what's talked about in 5G is speed. You can see advertisements on the television. Everyone talks about the speed for 5G, same like they did for 4G when it came out. But the reality is that 5G is much more than just having your phones connect to the internet faster. It allows not only a lot of information to go through at the same time, but most critical for us, lower delay. This, together with other features from 5G that have not yet rolled out, because 5G has been planned as a two-stage rollout. First is the connectivity, which is what you have on your phones right now. And the second one is more back-end capabilities. In this case, as discussed by O'Donnell earlier today, it is slicing. So together we have more amount of stuff we can send at the same time, lower delay to actually getting it, and a priority lane. I believe you've said it this way as well, where in regular traffic, everyone moves away for an ambulance. So it makes sense on the internet for everyone to move away from a critical medical communication. All of this together with the mobile edge computing talked about before allows the operators to provide a service in connectivity that has virtual no delay, no more 2-second pauses to finish the sentence that you had before. And there are some specific use cases, for example, in terms of dermatology, where even slight discolorations can have different meanings. To have that optimal image at no delay can really change the outcome of a diagnosis.
Okay, thanks very much, Ricardo. And I'll kind of ask Terry to say a little bit as well. Terry, you've kind of so much experience. You've probably seen it from 1G now to 5G. And what do you see? Like, there's digital transformation happening in many sectors, and healthcare now it's accelerating because of the pandemic. How do you see 5G and digital transformation, and then all the things that are coming with sensors and dashboards and integrating everything with video? What are your thoughts about how that's going to evolve, Terry, underpinned by 5G? I think maybe you have your moose on there. You might want to.
Right.
Yeah.
Got that one. I think what we'll see, as well as the improvements in the video quality and the latency or delay that we've talked about, I think we'll see incorporation of other inputs, such as ECG inputs or inputs from other sensors and monitors being overlaid on the video channel, so that when the doctor is looking at the patient and talking to them, he may also then see vital signs information that he requires, coming from remote wireless sensors that are being developed now and that patients have at home. So the combination of seeing the patient and being able to talk to them at the same time as looking at the responses from the sensors, I think is the next step. I think we will see that becoming quite widespread in in a short time, in the next couple of years. And there are, it's a bit like the way people used to talk about islands of automation. We now have islands where we have video and we have sensors, and they're not all connected up into one channel, or one way of feeding all of the information about the patient's environment to a remote location. And I think that integration will come. The technology is there to do it. It's a case of getting just development work and cooperation between different areas of expertise to deliver that, and also getting the inputs from the professionals on the medical side as to what they actually require, and putting that joined up approach together.
Okay, Terry. So just with 3 minutes left before the top of the hour, so just two more topics. Just the end-to-end part of it for Ricardo, and then back to the co-creation part for Terry. So just on the end-to-end, Ricardo, like Terry's wearing the camera there, and you're building the software, and it's going into the network. And there's some companies that provide, like Teams and Zoom, like they just provide software, and then there's some companies that provide cameras. You've integrated everything together, the hardware and the software. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that, how it gives the end-to-end benefit, Ricardo?
At the core, it is both security and privacy here. Because this call, a Teams call, you have no control or say on how the data is being sent. So right now, this could be routed through a number of servers on any number of locations. And despite all attempts to make it, let's say, politically viable, American hyperscalers, such as Amazon and others, still fall under American law, which means there is no absolute 100% guarantee that the data will be truly private if it's operated through those companies. As such, having control of the end-to-end from the video capture to video routing and to finally the video receiver, we assure that it stays within the EU borders, and it's fully GDPR compliant as such. And there are no need to worry about any kind of American law that can change the way they access the data by European customers.
Okay, Ricardo, thanks. And then the last question back to Terry, really about the co-creation. So like you've experienced working with telecoms companies all your career. I think you've been in telecoms for 40 years, and they're big organizations. And what we have is different ingredients. Can you just talk a little bit about how the co-creation works? So creating a new service, including the hardware, the software in the cloud, the wireless network, and then of course the most important is the doctors and nurses and patients that it's enabling. Can you just talk a little bit about that, Terry,
Yeah,
and the creation?
I suppose that the users don't really know what goes on the path from the side of my head here to the screen that the doctor might be looking at. And that can be controlled by the national mobile operators in a country. And by working closely with the mobile operators, we can develop services then that can be deployed in a region. The advantages are that the mobile operator can then embed our software into their network. And that means that the path, as Ricardo was saying, is well managed all of the way from the camera right through to the receiving end, and it can be managed nationally or within the EU or whatever way a provider might want it done. So to build services on 5G has been designed in such a way that dedicated services can be put into that network. We have talked about prioritization, where there's a specific amount of capacity or bandwidth, or call it the bus lane, that is set aside for video and for emergency services. And that's a massive step forward over previous technologies where it didn't matter who you were or what you were doing, you were fighting to get space on your local GSM tower. And if all of the channels were used, maybe you didn't get a signal or you couldn't get through. Now we're getting to a point where services can be identified and will be given the capacity that they require for emergencies.
Thanks very much, Terry. And Jan, we're at the top of the hour now. Do you want to ask any questions from the panel, from the audience on the panel, or are you ready to close now? Because I think we're at the top of the hour. What's next?
Yeah, so I just had a couple of questions, but I think Terry has answered one of them in his last talk, which was what can telecommunication service providers do to help in healthcare? So I think you've answered that very well there, Terry. Thank you. And thank you both for all of your insights on so many different aspects of the technology. There are so many aspects to it, between product design, cloud, 5G, technology adaptations, new mobile services, emergency services, prioritization. And I like your comparison of people moving out of the way for an ambulance, Ricardo, and comparing that with data moving out of the way for emergency or prioritized data. There's one other question is did COVID-19 help the pilot get started or did it hinder it?
Both. So it was both, I think, because first of all, it hindered us because I think we took a delay for 1 year, but then it helped because Annika said, no, you can't come to Sweden. You have to do everything remotely. And that forced us to, get it more automated and active. So it was both. And I do want to visit Sweden again, but I'm doing less travel now as everybody is. So yeah.
Maybe I would just add to that, that at the patient's end, COVID had a major effect on the acceptance of using video. We saw that in our own country here, where the only means sometimes of contacting the patient was by video. And there was a general acceptance in the population that this could now be done and was acceptable. Whereas before that, it was a really slow takeoff and acceptance in the medical and the patient community. Suddenly everyone realized that, yes, this is possible. We can do this.
Yeah, very good.
I think it's accelerated the digital transformation in hospitals. It's just brought a focus to, and the green effect as well, because now people are doing telemedicine and less people are traveling on the roads because people are working from home. They're also realizing that, okay, they can save on using the internal combustion engine and save on carbon emissions. And I think you had some interesting statistics about that. So that's really kind of a side effect, and people are just realizing that in the healthcare as well, that it's going to be beneficial for digital transformation in the healthcare, but also society for more generally, because there'll be less carbon put out by those home teleconsultations.
Yes, indeed. I think we calculated it was 4 kilos of carbon saved by each consultation made virtually, rather than people driving to hospitals and clinics. I guess we better finish up. It's been a really interesting discussion, but I'd like to give just the last say to Region Västmanland, in that, what is the future as you see it for healthcare innovations, and does it include 5G and video? Oh, we don't hear you.
Oh,
It is a very big question about the future of the innovation of healthcare. And it's very inspiring too, because it concerns all of us. And in one way or another, either ourselves or people around us. And, the demographic question we'll be talking about today. And if we continue to do what we always been doing, we're going to have the same results. And that will not work in the long run. So we need to engage in areas around healthcare, and we need to find new innovation, both products and process, and to search to have a good quality of life even tomorrow. And I guess it's going to include 5G, 6G, keep going. We need to find new ways.
Yes, very good. Thank you. I think we're all agreed that radical innovation is needed throughout the healthcare systems to meet the challenges that we face. And we're very proud to have been a small part of that change. So I'm kind of reluctant to close it down because we're having such an interesting discussion, but I'm aware of the time. So I'd like to thank you all for your time and for a very interesting and inspiring discussion.
And thanks very much, Jan, for organizing it. And lovely to work with you, Anika and Matthias and Dr. Jan and everybody in Västerås and Västmanland. So it's a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we hope to find an opportunity to do so again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.